Of the Mental Health Movement podcast, Voice for the Voiceless. I am your host, Chris. These last couple months have been really exciting, a lot of really great guests. So again, I have to thank you guys, the audience, for supporting and listening. As you guys know, about in 15 different countries and have reached 1,800 people in our Facebook group. So keep the support coming, guys. Keep the feedback coming for these podcasts because your voice is very important to me. Today's special guest we have today, she's a very, very bright personality in this mental health community, and I feel she is a very important voice that I wanted to bring on here. She is a healing and energy coach. Please help me welcome Nikki Valentine. Nikki, how are you?
Hi, thank you so much for having me, Chris. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, I'm super excited you came on here too.
Yeah.
Like I was telling you before the recording, when I reached out to initially, I always get that, the nerves with content creators because
Of
it's just
course.
like, is my platform too big that I can't be on somebody?
Oh,
Because I have had those people that, if they're at like a certain amount of followers, they can't
mhm.
risk their following for
Yeah,
whatever reason.
crazy.
So super happy that you came on here today.
I'm so glad because here's the thing, man. Social media is about being social. I think people forgot that first part. It's not just media. We're going to be social. So if we're not going to interact and we're going to go by, that's crazy to me. It's like, let's extend this mission as far as we can. And if I have a platform to do that, I'm happy to bring on creators of any numbers, bigger, smaller, what have you. So I'm excited.
Right. And, one of the biggest things for me is whenever I first created the Facebook group, like I was telling you, I was in another Facebook group that I didn't create, or I was, just part of it, shared my story, and it got about 700 likes on one post. And I'm like, okay, this could turn into something.
Yeah.
Um, so I started posting a little bit more, a little bit more. And eventually one of the admins reached out to me and said, hey, how would you like to be, write for a blog that we have? One of the admins has a suicide prevention blog that they would love for you to be part of. I'm like, okay, great
Okay.
opportunity.
Yeah.
So they posted the first blog. It didn't get a lot of attention, so it kind of came off to me as they're trying to suppress how much uh, attention my posts were getting.
Mhm.
And the second blog that I ended up posting, it took me about 5 hours to write, and they didn't post it. And it was, a month went by, and I reached out to them like, hey, I finished this blog and submitted it, and it's just kind of sitting there. So I was just trying to figure out what was going on. After no response, they just kind of left me on red, kind of confirmed my fears of the trying to suppress me thing. So I created my own group.
Yeah.
They kicked me out of that group because I created my own mental health group.
What?
And I remember the conversation I had with the admin, and they were upset that I did it. And I said to them, like, aren't we in this mental health community together? Like,
Yeah.
isn't your message my message and vice versa? Like, I'm not here to make money off of your followers. I'm not
Right.
here to ask for anything.
Yeah.
But if you're trying to give people a voice and you're trying to share all these stories, and it's great that you guys are doing what you're doing, but like holding people down is not how you do it.
No, it's not. It's not.
So it's always great to hear from a content creator that's humble enough to say, hey, look, we're all in this together. We're all trying to push the same message. So,
Yeah.
again, thank you so much for being who you are.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So the first question I had for you was just kind of get into your former profession here because I thought it was a very interesting
Yeah.
journey that you've had.
I,
Tell us a little bit about your journey in the fashion industry. What was that experience like?
oh man, talk about mental health. So basically, I started at 21, graduated college, started my own fashion production company after like a year of kind of internship, apprenticeship. And I was in Florida, which is not a fashion market, right? It's not known for fashion, but I just had such a love for it, such a passion for it that I was like, I'm just going to do it in my city and start things. And I did that for about 5 years. It was amazing, produced over 25 shows. It was an amazing experience. And then I made the crazy decision of like, let me move to New York. If you're going to do fashion, you have to jump into the big pond with the big fish and see if
Makes
you can
sense.
swim, right? So, also had some amazing experiences in New York, but I figured out that the fashion industry is a lot more work and a lot more negativity than people see.
Right.
Low pay, long hours, mean people for, 25% glitz and glamour. And so to me, like, it started to drain on my mental health. I worked for a PR studio in Manhattan, which I don't know if you ever heard of the movie Devil Wears Prada, but it was literally that. I was like picking up yogurt and sweatshirts for dogs and like being read around. Like, you wouldn't believe how people treat you in PR. It's very nasty. It's like a known thing in New York that PR people are just mean, and that's what it is. And that just didn't resonate with my spirit. I thought to myself, I love fashion, but if it means I have to be this kind of person or work around these kind of people, there's no way. I can't do it. And so I ended up going back to grad school. And when I graduated, and interestingly, I went to LIM College, which is a school here that's a business school, but it also has a fashion program. It's like the only one in the country that's a hybrid. So I moved here to do that, thinking I was going to stay in fashion. And when I graduated, I was like, they're mean. I don't like this. And so by divine, call it coincidence, call it accident, what have you, I ended up getting a job at a tech startup. And it was only because, you're going to love this. I'm aging myself. I taught myself how to like make websites and do HTML from MySpace back in the day when I was in college. And apparently that tiny bit of skills got me into a tech company because they just needed people manually testing. And so that was my like official transition out of fashion and into tech. And here's how that ended up into mental health. Tech is even more stressful than fashion.
Absolutely.
It's not that people are mean. It is just a very intense field. And
it's always evolving.
Yeah, it's always evolving. I learned a lot really fast and I ended up elevating really fast, but it also destroyed my nervous system and my mental health. I ended up getting diagnosed with fibromyalgia during my time in tech, and essentially like was forced into therapy because my depression and anxiety turned into panic attacks once I started working for a really big tech company 5 years ago. And so life kind of forced me into caring about wellness and mental health because I broke down myself. And that's when I realized, like, wait a minute, making money is great, but this is going to kill me. And there has to be a better way. And I can't be the only person that's going through this. And so the more I launch myself into it, the more I realize, like, this is a thing. And if this is my unique journey to talk about it because I've experienced it, then let's do it.
Yeah, that's it's heartbreaking to hear that something as big as fashion can be so mentally draining, considering how much of the world that consumes. And I work for a tech company, so I definitely understand how it drains you mentally. It allows me to be able to do the mental health stuff that I do, so it's kind of like I have that balance. But when you're forced to find that help for yourself and realize you might not be in the right place that you need to be. And when you start looking in the mirror and realize you hate the person that you see because you're sacrificing your mental well-being to make a good paycheck. And, speaking from somebody who wasn't, well off financially growing up, average middle income family, right? And I've always heard from so many people that we are surrounded by that, money could solve so much, and money this and money that. It's like, money could solve a lot of my problems. But I've also looked up to people that have had that kind of money that has taken their life because money is all that they know. And that fame and everything else just, it's great at first, I'm sure. But when you get consumed by it and you realize how draining those people are around you. And, it's always interesting to hear somebody's journey that just when it's a complete roller coaster for everything. But from fashion to IT to mental health is pretty incredible.
It's pretty crazy. But something, to your point, like that's a thing that enough people don't talk about. And my therapist said to me once, poverty is trauma. Absolutely. And it can make you do a lot of things that may not be in your best interest. I am originally from Jamaica and I moved to the States at 7. And essentially my family's socioeconomic status plummeted the second we moved to this country. So we were doing well. We came here, we're poor. And I was like, poor? What does that mean? That's deep. Like, okay, cool. We're like struggling middle class like everybody else. And so your focus becomes getting out of that. And it becomes any means necessary. I'm going to make money. That is my sole focus. I have to get elevation. I have to get to that place. I have to get to that 6 figures or whatever. And I remember literally the year I started making 6 figures, and it was crushing because I was still miserable. And I was like, wait a minute, this was supposed to fix it. What the hell? Right. I was so mad, Chris. I was like, I know I didn't work this damn hard, and I'm still miserable. And none of my friends will talk to me because they haven't heard from me in 5 years because I've been steeped in tech. And my family is like, who's that girl? We haven't seen her either. Like, holy crap. What was this thing about? What did I do all of this for? Like, it didn't actually fix anything. And also, the creepy thing happens, and I tell people all the time, I want you to manifest everything you want so that you can really get to the stuff you've been ignoring. Because when you can finally pay your bills and put them on auto draft, you realize, ooh, you have anger issues. Damn, I have trauma. My parents and I we're not here. Like, I have a lot of stuff that I shoved this way because I really put the economic stuff first, but it doesn't go. It stays in your head. It stays in your body. So eventually, wellness and mental health, you either pay attention to them or they will make you pay attention to them.
Yeah. I've always found it interesting with the people that have that mentality of money over everything. It's like, I get it. I can understand, especially in today's economy, today's world, I get it. Yeah. But like you said, if you don't pay attention to it, it's going to make you pay attention.
Yeah.
And for me, I didn't start like actual therapy until I was about 27, and I'm 31 now. So it's one of those things where I suppressed so much, and it took me a second attempt to realize that, okay, I need to do something about this.
Yeah.
And that was when my brother called me the night I wrote my note. I had the means and everything to do it. And he called me and he's like, there was a voice from God telling me that I needed to reach out to you. And I saw that post right before he deleted it. And I just want you to know that I'm here. And when he called me, I was behind the wheel, like I said, I had the means, I was getting ready to do it. And his voice just immediately put my car in park.
Yeah.
And it's so hard, obviously not saying this to slight anybody's struggles, but it's hard as a man,
of course,
to talk about your feelings.
Yes, you guys don't have support systems like women do.
Right. And whenever I do say that, I always I'm careful how I word it because I don't want anybody to be offended when I say it.
No.
So grateful that you said.
I say this all the time. Listen, women are expected to be emotional. So we have containers for it. Socially, we're set up for that. If a woman, and here's how I know that, if a woman comes out of a breakup, all of her girlfriends come around her, right? What happens to a man? His friends tell him to get over it. They take you to the strip club. They send you back home. You're grieving. No one cares. Men care if men provide. People care if men protect. They don't really care about men's feelings. And unfortunately, what I noticed is even in modern day, it's like, oh, we want men to be more emotional. But the second you see a man crying, it becomes a meme.
Right.
Why is that?
Yeah.
Like, ha, 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 cry face emoji of like these men. Like, no, this is what we were asking them to do, is to open up. So to your point, I actually have seen data around that the suicide rates are higher among men. Like the rates of getting therapy are lower. There's so many more stigmas around men reaching out to get help. So I think it is a thing. I think people that choose to get offended by that are choosing to hear what they want to hear. It's not that we don't have mental health problems, but if we really look at it on the face, men are struggling.
Like one of the guests that I had recently, she was a men's mental health advocate on TikTok. She's got a really big following, and she gets attacked a lot because, people don't agree with her, movement.
Wow.
And when I had her on here, I'm like, it's funny to me when you say men's mental health matters too. Yeah. They get mad at the two.
Right.
Yeah. And she's like there's no way to, right. And there's no way to eggshell any of this conversation.
There's not.
But when I first went to therapy, I remember the first 2 sessions, I couldn't look at my therapist in the face. Like, I was crying my eyes out. And I grew up in a household where you don't talk about your feelings. You don't talk about what you're going through. You don't cry. Men don't do that. Boys don't do that. You don't cry. Right. And before I moved back down to Florida, funny enough, I was in New Jersey.
No way.
Yeah. And when I came back down to Florida and find the therapist I have now, who's absolutely godsend,
Mm-hmm.
it's amazing to me how much you realize you put yourself through just to get by through the day. Never mind 5 years like you had to
Right. And to avoid
do.
the stuff that's in here, like
Right.
we will do everything to avoid feeling the stuff that hurts.
Yeah.
Everything. I
Right.
think that's why a lot of people, like the pandemic was so crushing for a lot of people because you had to stop.
Yeah.
We were all running around, running away from whatever it was, right? Like I didn't start therapy until maybe 2019. And I'll tell you something, you know why? It's the dumbest reason, Chris. I got into a fight in a grocery store. And I don't fight. That's not my thing.
Interesting.
I don't fight. But what was happening is that my nervous system was so on edge. My mental health was so destroyed. I was so stressed that a really small incident sent me over the edge.
Right.
And I remember being asked, the other person being asked by a police officer, do you want to press charges? It's only by the grace of God she said no, she could have. And when I walked home that day, I was like, tomorrow I'm going to therapy because something's wrong. Something's wrong. And I think especially, and I see this in men too, and I made a video about this. A lot of times anxiety shows up as anger.
Right.
It's not that you're angry, it's that you feel so overwhelmed and so fried and you have no way to express that it comes out in an angry way. I see that happen with men a lot, you know.
Always on edge.
So, always on edge. Or
right.
He's just an asshole. Is
he? Right.
Or because yeah, there are some people like that, but
Sure.
Is it also that he's under tremendous stress and has no place to put it and he's going through depression and he can't say he's sad to anybody, right? Like, so I think that is a thing. And I think in general, like we live in a social media era of people make money now off of looking happy and perfect. So it is even harder for people to come on here and say, I'm struggling. Yeah. I feel like that's why with my platform, it is my, you know, when I think about like the questions that we discussed, my intention, my goal is to show that there is no face to mental health. There is no, yeah, you look like you would have depression or you look like you're fine. That doesn't exist. I have depression and anxiety. Like, right? Your neighbor, your brother, your sister have it. They're struggling. It doesn't mean we're any less cool. I'm cool as hell. But I have depression. So, right. And it doesn't make me a bad person. It doesn't make me a weak person. It doesn't make me any of that. Like, it actually makes me a stronger person to be like, yeah, I want to stay on this earth. And for me to do that, it requires a therapist, maybe some medication and a whole lot of support and being honest with people and being like, yeah, today's not the day. Right. Like, but that's hard.
Yeah. So you said you're in therapy now, right?
Yeah.
Have you ever looked at a younger photo of yourself and like compared it to where you are now, like mentally?
Yes. Inner child work is some of the roughest.
It really is.
Most rewarding.
Yeah. I recently came across a picture of myself in 9th grade. About 14 years old. That was my first attempt. And I remember looking at the picture. I was looking at my face, you know, just trying to read the eyes. And I'm just like, man, the stories those eyes can tell. And I just remember like
where you were,
everything about that year. And it was, you know, self-harm was really bad. And then the attempt was bad at school. And it's just like looking at myself now is a tremendous difference, you know, and it's funny when you start doing therapy and you realize how much effort you have put into your healing and be able to have conversations like this. And people underestimate how strong that is.
Oh man, like I never spoke about this stuff before I started. Like I would say before, because I started coaching in 2017. And if I hadn't done this business, I don't think I would have ever talked about it. Like, and how funny, right? That like helping other people is what helped me talk about it in myself. But you're right. Like people walk around on a daily basis with some stuff in their head that my mom has a really funny phrase. She always says, if you asked everyone to throw their problems in a pile, you would snatch yours and run. If you saw the shit some people were dealing with, you'd be like, oh, no, I'm good. I'm just going to take my little, what I thought was so insane. I'm going to go because what? Like,
Right.
that's what shocks me. And so my intention always in any space is like to give people that room. It's like when people ask you, how are you doing? I
Such a
reflect.
loaded question.
When I ask people how they're doing and they say fine, I'm like, no, you're not. And I can see it all in your face. And I can
My
hear it all.
favorite response. I'm fine.
Right? Yeah. Oh, yeah, I'm good. No, you're not. Or when people start to tell it and they're like, but it's fine. It's probably whatever. I'm like, no, let's go back to that because it's bothering you.
Right.
And maybe nobody gave you 5 minutes today to say, I'm not okay, bro. And that's all people need. Because to be honest with you, the way that one phone call kept you here, I've had somebody give me that same phone call, which is why I know how important community is. In 2021, I got out of a 13-year relationship. I was engaged. And I tell my best friend to this day, I would not be on this earth. She had to FaceTime me every day, multiple times a day. Because I told her, I was like, I'm out of here, bro. Plans are made. Like, I'm done with this shit. I can't. And so people don't realize the power of just a phone call. Like, what? That keeps, I tell her to this day, it's been 3 years. I'm like, you don't even know, bro. Like, you think you just called, like, you kept me here.
Right.
That is serious. Like,
and there's a really important piece out of that I took away is, people underestimate how powerful a phone call is, right? And I always say this in the group when people say that they're there for you. I'm like, most people don't know what that means.
No, they
and
don't.
It's not I want advice. It's not I want anything from you. It's some people just need somebody to listen to, or to listen to them.
Yes.
And I remember when my brother passed away and I couldn't sleep for 3 months. Just like constantly hearing the sound of the her store, just constantly keeping me awake.
Yeah.
And I remember the night that I got the call and one of our really good friends, he just stopped by. Like, he didn't call, he just stopped by in the parking lot because, Santi was a lot to me too. I've never in my life, Nikki, when I tell you this, I've never in my life ran to another man's arms in tears
and
just didn't say anything. And
not saying anything, exactly. You just needed someone to hold you and hold space for you.
And that's what so many people don't understand is us people that are, extroverted or introverted, or even both. If you have that balance, and I'm not sure what that balance is called, but I'm more extroverted than I am introverted.
Really?
I love conversation. I love connecting to people any way that I can. And during the pandemic, like you said, that was really hard for me.
Yeah.
And trying to get used to a virtual therapy instead of face-to-face was the biggest challenge, because it's like, oh, this therapist isn't going to work out because we're seeing him face-to-face and you can't get that emotion, they can't show that they really care, right? First session that I had with her, I remember it was because somebody really close to me just passed away. And we talked about that for the whole session. And I'm like, you know what? This might just work out because she was just so welcoming and you can see that she cared about her job. And that's another thing. Yeah. So many people in this community that have the following that they have, that make the money off of it that they do, just don't have the heart to go with it.
That bothers me the most, Chris.
Yeah.
It actually bothers me the most. And the thing is, I see it with coaching because coaching is unregulated.
Right.
At least therapists have to hold up a certain standard, but it's shocking to me how many people have, even in my comments, been like, yeah, my therapist never even told me anything close to this. Like, when I hear sometimes, I'm like, why would you do this job? Like, my undergrad was in psychology. And I remember at the very end of the program, you have to do a practicum and like do a session as the therapist with your mentor. And I remember the one thing she told our classes, she was like, listen, just because you graduate from here doesn't mean you're ready to be a therapist. Just because you graduate from grad school doesn't mean you're ready. If your life is in shambles, number one, you're not ready. Number two, if you feel like bitter listening to other people's problems, you're not ready. You have to be 100% in this work because you want to do this work and because you care about people. You will do them a disservice. That's like being a doctor and not caring about people's life. Right. How could you be a surgeon and not, right? So it really bothers me that people take up this work for financial gain.
Yeah.
I stopped my business for a year and a half. As soon as the breakup happened, I put the skids on my business. Chris, I said, who can I coach?
Right.
Who? I will give up the money because my integrity tells me I am not in a space to guide anyone to their higher self.
And that's so important.
I need therapy. I cannot pour from an empty cup. I could come on here and be fake to get money on the internet, but that's whack. And you want to know the beautiful thing is, this social following only came when I came back, Chris. This happened this year after me taking that break. And you know what that to me is, if you do things with integrity, people are going to be there. The money will be there. Everything will be there if your heart is set in the right place.
Right.
There, you know, like, so it taught me, like, you don't have to be chasing money and doing this. Like, people, these are people's real lives. It hurts me when I see people invest their money into, that's the other thing, right? Is if somebody invests their money in you, they're desperate, bro.
Right.
Like, how do you take that and not deliver and help them? That's crushing.
Absolutely.
That could have been their last little money. Most people don't just want to throw money at therapy, like, right? Like, that's not, it's because you really needed a help. You really needed a lifeline. And so for me, like, yeah, man, if you're not serious about this work, it's like teaching or medical, do not do it for a check.
Yeah.
This is that type of job.
Oh man, and especially teaching too. That's another rough one.
Right.
And with the therapy part, you know, there's also another side to that coin. I interviewed a therapist a couple months ago. She's like, you know, a lot of people don't really treat therapists like people too. No, it's just kind of like, oh, they don't realize that therapists have personal stuff too that they're going through, that they might have a therapist as well.
Yeah.
Like my
like
therapist,
they're perfect and don't go through anything.
right?
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
My therapist is absolutely incredible. Like, if she's going through anything, like, I genuinely don't want her to take my sessions if she's going through something. Like, that's the kind of bond that I have with her. Like,
love that.
She has helped me through Amy's passing and Santi's passing. And if she's ever like, oh, you know, I have to cancel this week because, you know, she's got stuff going on, perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
My sessions with her are not because I'm in a mental state where I need one all the time. It's more, she offers perspectives that people around me can't give me.
That's it. And I think there's also a thing too, because I listening to what you said earlier, I too come from a semi-traumatizing home. Let me take the semi out. It was traumatizing. That was not intentional, you know, on my parents' part, but like, shit happens. And so when you grow up around people that aren't necessarily the healthiest example in all areas, maybe there's some things that my parents excel at and they can give me advice on it. That's what's up. But when it comes to some things, I need that perspective. And I want people to know that that's okay. Like, your family and your friends cannot meet every need. And quite frankly, they're not trained for a lot of the stuff you go through, right? Like, I tell people that with even like, listen, I have a ton of girlfriends. I was smart enough to know after my breakup that all that they can't give me good advice. Half of you are single. The other half of you are bitter. The ones that are in a relationship, you don't even, right? Like, you are not equipped. You love me, but you're not equipped to tell me what's good for me and what isn't. You're not equipped to help me recognize patterns of what's good for me and not, because I also haven't shared certain things with you that I would have shared with my therapist. See, that's the other thing, is they know enough about your past and enough about your childhood to be like, so you don't see how this is not good? Because remember all what we talked about? Let's bring it back to this current day thing. You're telling me they can wrap that all together. And I really needed that in what I call the brain reprogramming process of me relearning boundaries and relearning what people are good for me and aren't. And I needed a person to handhold me to be like, you're doing good on this one. That one, run, not so good, right? Because we don't all have that. And especially when you come from kind of a screwy childhood, you definitely don't have it and you have to rebuild it. And I want people to know that.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. And you know, when you have those family members, when you have those friends that, oh, why didn't you come to me, save your money and come to me, talk to me about this stuff? Like you said, they can't offer you what a therapist can offer you. You know,
and it's not objective.
Exactly. It's like, they're not saying it because they're your friend.
No, right. Like, you, because here's the thing, people that love you want you to have what you want, but what I want may not be good for me. Right. A therapist wants what's best for me. She doesn't give a shit about me being bummed out because I don't get what I want. You know what my therapist told me once? And this is like the coldest shit I've ever heard in my life, Chris, but I, to this day, love her for it. She said to me, after a couple of years of working with her and, you know, all the things, she said, I don't ever want to hear about you entertaining your ex. And do you know why? I said, No, but I'm kind of nervous now because it sounds a little harsh. She goes, here's the thing. You think you can just hang out and just, no, you're going to go down a slippery slope. You're going to end up suicidal again. You're going to end up right back on my couch undoing all the work that we did. She gave it to me 1,000 like that. And I was like, whoa. And she was like, yeah, don't play with me. We've done work here. And I care too much about you to let you undo that. Like,
I love that.
That was eye-opening to me because it's like, oh, your friends aren't going to tell you it's that serious.
Right.
You can hang out with him once, girl. You can hang out with her. It's fine. No, your therapist is going to be like, remember your attachment issues. Remember your parents. Remember how you have trauma. Remember how you have anxiety. No, that family is going to literally my therapist. I thought about moving back to, I used to live in Florida, where my family is. She literally said to me, she was like, do you not think that's going to set you back on your mental health journey? Remember everything you told me about your family? Yeah, moving right back next to them may not be the ticket. You love them, go see them. All that's cool. But like, right, meanwhile, my friends are like, move back, it's lit. Like, so people that love you, they want what they want and they want you to have what you want. None of that means it's healthy. God bless them. You know what I mean? Right. So I feel like we have to have an objective party. I wish therapy were free, frankly. Like, it bothers me that we have welfare and not free therapy. It should be a package. Everybody needs an objective opinion.
And the free therapy that we do have just isn't full of people that are willing to go the extra mile, like an actual I don't want to say actual therapists and insult them because they're doing.
Yeah, to your point, it's like a public defender.
Right, exactly.
It's not that they don't care, it's that they are not supported to care, right? If you have a 95-person caseload, I can't give you the best legal care. People who are put in that position of free or subsidized mental health, it's the same thing. Their caseload is so insane. Most social workers I know are underwater.
Yeah.
They care though, but it's like they're literally not even supported to give you the best therapy. Unfortunately, that's going to cost about $300 a session, $250, $200, whatever it is, you know?
Right.
That's rough.
Yeah. And, you know, my therapist, when I told her I was moving down to Florida, you know, she was crushed because we were making progress and everything.
Right, because you were in person.
Yeah. And so that was a different therapist that I had in Jersey.
Okay.
I left to get away from my mom because that whole thing was toxic. And my aunt tried to get me to stay in Jersey after my attempt. And she's like, you haven't even given it a year and this and that. I'm like, do you not realize what just like happened? Like, I'm a little.
This is my life. Yeah.
Right. I'm like, is it going to take me succeeding for you to see how bad it is? And I said that to my grandma. I said, that's how I felt when I was leaving Jersey to come back to Florida. Was I think it's going to take me going through with it for anybody to really see what I was going through. And thank God I did that.
That's what you need to feel.
Yeah. And, you know, when I came back down here, I had one bad experience with a therapist, and that was just mainly because she just wanted to throw medication at me. Like, first session, didn't write anything down. And immediately said, "Oh, would you take medication?" I'm like, "No, I don't want to take medication. Like, I just want somebody to listen."
Yeah.
And she brought up the diet thing, which she's not wrong about, but
is that the main issue? No.
Right. And then I had my first anxiety attack in our second session. And she cut me off mid-sentence and said that that's all the time that we have. And then she kicked me to the curb.
No. Are you serious?
Yeah. Yeah.
Lady, quit your job. Why do you do this?
It was a really bad
experience. Like, the consequence of that could have sent you over the edge.
Right. And I was in a really bad place too. And I'm thankful every day that
going and try to find another one, and that's the other thing is, like, it's so hard to admit you need therapy, reach out, find a person, that a lot of people don't recover from that first bad experience.
Yeah.
Right? Because it was so hard to even get in the chair in the first place that it kind of makes you feel like, see, I knew I shouldn't do this so I'm really glad that you continued pursuing it, but it's like, golly, that can turn somebody off the thing for life. Like, if you're not going to listen to me, fuck it. I mean, I may as well not even try to do this.
Exactly. And I didn't want to go back to the place that I was before I moved to Jersey, because I was suppressing everything. I was very numb growing up. And yeah, definitely thankful that I found who I found.
Mm-hmm.
So what does mental health and mental well-being mean to you?
That is a great question. And, perhaps my definition is a little different from some people's, but when I think of well-being, it's like a wheel, because technically, I don't know if most people know this, there's actually different kinds of wellness. There's like 7 different kinds of wellness. So not just mental, physical, spiritual, emotional. I think people know those 4. But there's also like intellectual wellness. How much are you reading? Social wellness. How much are you hanging out with people? There is actually an entire financial wellness, right? It's all the relational wellness. So it's all the aspects of your life. Are you generally doing well in them, right? Every single piece of the pie isn't going to be great, but generally I like to say 75-25, you're at a place of wellness where, like, of those wheels on the pie, most of them are all right. I call that well-being. Mental health is the ability to handle and properly process life's big emotions, because they're going to happen. And I think when we talk about people in mental illness, it is that you're not able to function in a society where big things happen, right? Like anxiety cripples us from making decisions and moving forward. Depression cripples us from taking action, executing. Like, so really mental health is the ability to function in the midst of all of this crazy nonsense. Mental illness is when we lose that ability to function in the middle of it, right?
That's a great way to look at it. It's always interesting to hear different perspectives, because especially looking at it like a piece of pie, because I didn't realize that intellect wellness was a thing. Like, I know of emotional intelligence and stuff like that, but like
Yeah.
intellectual wellness is a good one too,
Yeah.
because what you feed your brain.
Exactly. And the reason I love the pie is that people are usually doing better than they think they are.
Right.
Because here's why. You look at like the financial wellness piece, people look at like the physical part, mental part, because those feel so big, we assume those are the only parts of the wellness wheel. When really it's like, if you look at it, you've read plenty of books this year, you've taken in podcasts and expanded your mind, you have a good group of friends that love you, you have social wellness, like you go outside and you take a walk, you don't have to be thin. That's wellness. You're getting in movement. Movement does a lot of things for your body, whether you're 2 pounds or 250 pounds, right? That's wellness. You're eating fairly well. I say 80-20. I love Talenti ice cream, but I'll eat a salad. It's all good. I like a piece of chicken in the middle of that. That's wellness, right? But we often, like, society says if you're not married or you're not rich or you're not thin, then your life sucks and you're not doing well. That's not true. That's not true. So I think like we have to redefine wellness. And I also see it on the opposite side where, do you know how many wealthy, thin people I know who are not well? Because the rest of their wheel is fucked. They have no friends. They haven't read any books. They don't care about spirituality. They could care less about being emotionally available. They're terrible people.
Right.
They're not well. But society says they're doing well. I say screw that. Like, that's why they call it holistic wellness. When you look at the whole pie, right? And when you look at the whole pie, you're doing pretty good. Doing better than you think you are.
So that leads me to a question that I didn't write down, but leading out into this.
Yeah.
Society norms, I feel like, is something that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, and I feel like it should be brought up a lot more. Sure. How would you go about breaking that cycle of relying on the social norms? Because like you said, society says if you're thin, society says if you're wealthy, and everything that isn't completing you, you're well off. So how would you go about breaking that society norm?
2 things. It's by action and by word. Here's what I mean by that is the more, and I see it happening, the more wealthy people that share that they have mental health issues and personal challenges, the more people that we deem successful that speak out. Unfortunately, I think it happened in the way you said that some of those successful attempts showed us that success isn't what we think it is. Robin Williams still fucks with me to this day.
Yeah.
To this day. Because how did we not know? How did we not see that? He was so busy making us laugh and we didn't see it. I hate that. Because we said he was one of the most successful comedians of our time. We didn't ask enough questions. That's not success. So I think the more of us that speak, I think that's why social media is so important. Like, we have to. The only way we're going to break out of that is if the people that people are looking up to that say they have this thing go, yeah, but that's not it. Right. And also, though, action. What I mean by that is doing things for your mental well-being that break away from the societal norms, because it shows other people that they can. I used to be in a relationship that people called couple goals, matching outfits in the whole 9 yards, right? It was killing me. I had to get up and go, you know what? I'll walk away from this high-rise apartment. I'll walk away from this Audi truck. I'll walk away from the expensive dinners. I'll walk away from all of it, because it is not successful if I'm not happy in it, if I'm not being treated properly. And at least in the circle of people around me, I hope they saw that it's more important. It's more important. So the more of us that speak out and the more of us that act authentically, I think that's what's going to break that apart. Honestly, I think that's why I think all these breakups since the pandemic have been great.
Yeah.
That sounds crazy, but I think we will see couple goals is not a thing. How many rich people have we seen go through devastating mental health, devastating losses, lost family members? It ripped the veil off this thing to be like, you're not immune from the human experience. You don't get to skip that as successful as you are. It will happen to you too. Right. The most successful, Kanye West is a billionaire and unfurled when his mother died. You understand me? Because
I was literally just going to say that.
Death hits us all and you can't avoid it, and you will fall apart. And I'm glad he let us watch him fall apart so that we could all get the reminder as human beings, like, guess what? That's going to happen to you one day. And it's going to hit you like a fucking Mack truck. I've never met a person that has lost a family member who did not fall apart. Right. Never met one. It tells me it's impossible. It's a human condition. And I know one day it's going to be my turn. Like we have to so I think that's how we break the stigma, is like more people showing that. You look like you had a thought about Kanye though. I'm curious.
Really funny. I was actually, well, not funny, but I was going to say Kanye was a great example of that. Yeah. Like word for word, what you said after his mom died, he spiraled out of control. Yes. And then they started painting him crazy. They started painting him every name in the book, and he can't express himself. He can't do this. He can't do that. And for me, it was Chester Bennington. It was the Linkin Park lead singer.
Oh,
it was everything to me. Yeah. I grew up idolizing that man.
Yep. Never saw that.
Yeah. And he spoke words that I couldn't think to even say. And being 14 years old and trying to figure out what your purpose is in life and not understanding, then you have a voice of a grown man telling you this is what he's going through.
Yeah.
And I remember where I was. I remember how I felt when he passed away. I was devastated.
Of course.
And, there was a second person that called me the same day of my second attempt, and it was my now tattoo artist.
Really?
Every tattoo that I have done is by her. I won't get it done by anybody else.
Yeah.
One of the first tattoos she did for me was a Chester Bennington tattoo that I have here.
No way. Let me see.
Yeah. Let me see if I can. So I have it right here.
Oh, how beautiful.
So she came up with the idea of putting his signature at the very bottom. And in between the lyrics, she put the suicide awareness semicolon in between the lyrics of the song. And ever since then, I will not get any tattoos done by anybody else. Like she just did my brother's 2-year anniversary tattoo as well. And
special.
Yeah. And I feel people hold celebrities and people with a lot of wealth to an unfair pedestal. Because, like you said, Robin Williams, nobody saw that coming.
And it's like, just because you have honestly, here's the thing I realize. Artists are the most troubled.
Absolutely.
It is a burden to have that many ideas in your head and that many downloads. And you know why I love that you brought up Linkin Park is like, I feel blessed to have grown up in a time when rock music was really good and very transparent.
Yes.
I'm almost 40, and rock music back when I was in middle school, high school, I remember being that kid in my room listening to Green Day and being like, they get it.
Right.
They fucking get, I'm angry and I'm sad and I'm depressed and they get it, bro. Like
Right.
Metallica, Bush, Korn, Nirvana, everybody was open. If you think about it, that was the only time that I heard men talking about their mental health.
Right.
Was in rock music and alternative music, and grunge was like the one place that men could be sad, like, and made beautiful music. Like that all of that music stays with me. And I make the joke that like when I'm depressed, I still listen to that. I had to pull out the Matchbox 20 a couple of years ago and I was like, whoop, we're going back in the bag. Because they were saying some things and they were feeling some things like that we couldn't say. And I love that you said that, like we didn't know how to express. We didn't know what that was called. Right. Like my friends and I always make the joke. I'm like, everybody knows that first line of the Papa Roach song. Right. We all, right? Because we were there and we were feeling that. Cut my life into pieces. This is the last resort. That hit like a fucking hammer. Like, bro, me too. I was like, seriously? Let me play this again. Like, but you're right. I feel like it's a shame that we don't have that anymore with celebrities. We don't have that. We knew Kurt was depressed. Yeah. We knew that. And we were rooting for him and it didn't work out, but we knew that. Like, we had never seen that vulnerability, right? Like, you know, one of my favorite bands to this day is Silverchair.
Okay.
Lead singer was anorexic and he nearly died. And the song Open Fire is about that. Like, who's making that music now to be like, I went through, and I remember, I'll never forget the music video because it was a very literal music video where he was in a mental hospital. The whole music video, like, and I just remember watching it and they're like wheeling him out in the wheelchair and he's like super thin. And I was like, Jesus.
I got goosebumps. I'm not even going to lie to you.
You know what that was real. Like, I think that's what sucks is that society got away from showing the real. And so people now don't have a space to say like, this is happening. Like, I remember when the Netflix series 13 Reasons Why came out.
I couldn't watch it. I couldn't do it.
Right? And you know why that was so hard? Because that was the first piece of media that admitted people are fucked up right now. Right. We've been so trying to pop bottles and pretend and like everyone has a Bugatti. That was the first piece of media that was like, by the way, though, kids are killing themselves.
Yeah.
Straight up. Like, we need more of that real conversation. And so I'm glad that if media isn't going to do it, your podcast is going to do it. My TikTok page is going to do it. Now we've taken it into our own hands to be like, if you keep feeding us this bubblegum shit, but we're suffering, bro. So we're going to talk about it. And my favorite comment on TikTok is, I feel so seen. That makes my day. Because that's all I want is for one person to know, like, damn, okay, I'm not crazy.
Right.
I'm not crazy. Like, I have some value. I should stick around here. There are other people that feel like I feel.
I agree.
That's impactful work. That's amazing work.
And when you get that validation from people that you look up to, really crazy.
It's crazy. I think that's been the craziest thing this year of like, I did not start my social medias with any intentions.
Right.
I'll joke all the time. I'm 38. I don't know much about all the gadgets, transitions, and kicking the screen and throwing on an outfit. I don't know how that works, right? Like, but I was like, if I can say something to people that will uplift them. And it took itself to where it took it, kind of like the Facebook group, kind of like the podcast, right? Like when you have good intentions, those get blessed. And it takes it places that you didn't think it would. But man, like I will say it too, like I'm grateful that TikTok exists because it feels like the only social media where you can say you're not okay. People are still pretending on Instagram. On TikTok, we're going to keep it 100. Over here, we've got attachment issues. Let's talk. And I love that for us. Like, you know?
I also feel like mental health kind of gets like swept under the rug a lot too on social media. Like unless you're like willfully looking for mental health related content or follow content creators, I feel like TikTok does it, Twitter does it, well, X, Facebook, I don't ever see anything mental health related. Same with Instagram. And
I thought about that. They don't push any of that forward in algorithm.
Right. And when I was talking to the men's mental health advocate I was mentioning earlier, she said that the mental health algorithm percentage is like 5% on TikTok.
What?
Yeah. And it's like one of those things where we're constantly fighting an uphill battle.
Yeah.
a lot of us get silenced. You know, I've had 3 videos taken down because responding to people that are just not treating other people well. Like, I'll give you a good example. There was a man in a wheelchair who asked this young lady out. I think they were outside a bar or something, and she started insulting him, saying that, you know, why don't you go run across the parking lot or something? Like, she was making fun of his handicap. And I remember replying to the video. I said, you know, this is a disgusting human being. I'm like, there should be no reason that none of her friends are holding her accountable. Like, nobody's stopping her.
Yeah.
Like, all these people holding up their phones, recording it, like whatever they're doing in the background. And it's just like, I responded by calling her a disgusting person, and it got taken down for bullying. And I just like, I don't understand.
Like, now I'm the bully? Really?
Right. And it's just like, TikTok, I'm kind of like a love-hate with TikTok. It's like,
yeah, because
it's
there
a
is a
great
little
platform.
censorship going on. There's some censorship
Yeah.
going on. You know what's crazy is I was banned for 3 weeks, 4 weeks or something like that, because I did a live about sexuality and depression. And I was like, let me get this straight. I got banned for talking about sexuality and depression when people are literally sex workers on okay, that's fine.
Right. That's
fine.
what I'm saying.
You know
It's
what I
really
mean?
weird.
So there is a little something weird going on in terms of like, I love that people are talking, but there is definitely some like algorithmical things going on. Like, you know what I looked up the other day? Information around microdosing. People are getting shadow banned for that. They can't even say the word mushroom. Yeah. They have to like point to an emoji. And I'm like, but that's plant medicine that helps people. And literally they're just making videos to tell you how it helps people. Like, why would you take that down? It's not like
probably, it's probably whoever's pockets are with TikTok and that platform, unfortunately.
Yeah. And it's like, you would rather us be like doing dances with our ass out. That's like the most, you know, advantageous thing. So it is so crazy. But it's like real conversations aren't being.
So I know you kind of talked about your intentions earlier when we first started speaking. What long-term goals do you have set for your platform?
Some fun things. So a couple things. One is that I will be going into doing retreats next year. I love in person. I started in person. I used to do monthly full moon circles. So I've always loved like the energy of people in person. And so I really want to bring that back, workshops and retreats. And I think in general, though, like, this is going to sound crazy, but I would love to be the Oprah of mental health and wellness, you know, because I feel like she has an amazing platform and she talks about some good stuff. But do we really have somebody in a seat that's that powerful who cares about that? Because you could say a lot more, and I can't tell her what she should say. She cares about what she cares about. But like, when I think of mental health, I can't think of one huge person that like, can't think of it, right? I'm like, that we need something to fill that space. And I think what's going to fill that space is to make it accessible and cool to people. And that's also my goal, is like, it doesn't have to feel like a dry, stodgy 80-year-old person in a chair conversation. Like, how can we bring this into culture and make it fun, you know? And so that's why a lot of my videos are like lighthearted, but we're going to talk about some serious shit. Because I feel like, you know, we have to address this stuff, but it doesn't have to feel like, you know, that would be my goal, is to, whether that's a TV show, whether that's a podcast, whether that's just getting my voice out there in a bigger way. I just think, and this is going to sound crazy, but I also think I have that intention because my clients are Black women. And I find that as Black women, it is assumed that there's nothing wrong with us.
Interesting.
Yeah. Because like the strong Black woman. So that
I see. Okay. I see.
When millions of Black women suffer from mental health and no one sees it, right? And no one cares and no one holds space for that, because it's like, you're supposed to be strong, do your thing. So I think also just like being a voice for, you know,
the voiceless.
Right? Literally, right? I see what you did there. No, I love it. That's what you're doing, is literally, we share a same, that's why you reached out to me. I was like, absolutely, we're aligned in the same mission, which is like the voice for the voiceless. I never want to be a big mouth just for me. There's a lot of other people who, you know, and I used to be told I talk too much when I was younger, but I'm like, maybe I can put that to some good use.
Right.
You know?
Yeah.
So
and I really love that you said, you know, try to bring it to today's culture, because the visual of an 80-year-old person just sitting there taking notes is
Right?
really
It's
important.
not. Yeah.
Um, because when people think of therapy, when people think of taking care of their mental health, it's like, I'm going to sit on this couch and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to have he or she sit there and take notes. And how do you feel about that? And
Right.
that's the stigma, right?
Yes.
You and
Yeah.
I both know better that it's nothing
Right.
like
But
that.
everyone doesn't know that.
And so I had a podcast that dropped today. It
Mhm.
was with a game designer,
Ooh,
and he created a card game for mental health.
really?
And he was saying he wanted to bring mental health, like you said, into today's culture, because
Yeah.
most of these kids' youth is technology and
Right.
and memes and
Yeah.
everything else. And he's like,
Yeah.
what better way to bring mental health into something than a game?
Yeah.
And I think he was a game designer for over 20 years, 30 years.
Oh, yeah.
And so he's seen it all. So to be able to bring that to a kid,
I love
and
that
yeah.
because we got to
So
hit this thing from all angles, don't you think?
right. Yeah, I absolutely agree. Because, like you said, and I wasn't aware of the stigma of, Black woman has to be strong. So I appreciate you bringing that up, because I didn't know that was a stigma, genuinely.
Yeah. Similar to, and it's interesting because there have been a lot of other like podcasts and conversations around this, but I think a masculinization happens with Black women that is a similar experience of what men face in terms of you're not supposed to cry. You're not supposed to be the weak one. You're not supposed to seek solace in other, like you're supposed to be that person that people can come to for the things when like you're still a human being and you still have your human experience. So I think that like there are so many intersections of mental health too. And I think that's what's interesting. Like, so for the last couple of years, I did a thing called Heart and Soul at Spot. I used to work at Spotify, and they have a mental health and wellness initiative called Heart and Soul. And for a couple of years, I was one of the global leads. And so we would do a lot of like programming and intersect with a lot of, and here's what was super interesting about that. I remember doing programming with like, so there's what's called employee resource groups where like, different groups get together. I remember we did programming for the group that was called Muslim At, which was completely different than programming that we did for the LGBT community, which was completely different than programming we did for the Black group. And what it showed me is like, there are so many sectors and walks of life that face mental health differently that we
Right.
need as many people in this work as fucking possible, because
Absolutely.
everybody has to have a place where they see themselves. And if they don't see themselves, they're not going to feel safe to like get in and do it too. You know what I mean? Or like not feel safe to say, oh, okay, I have mental health issues too. Like that's why I feel like I love to see celebrities too that speak out, because it's like, how many people look up to you because they see something in you? Like people like Travis Barker, people like Megan Thee Stallion. I love to see that because you're a badass. Travis Barker is like the most badass of badassery. But like, do tell us that you had anxiety and couldn't get on a plane because someone very close to you died and you like, we need more of that. We need that.
Yeah.
Right. So yeah, man, I just think there's a great avalanche right now of energy, but it's also like mental health is not a monolith.
Right.
Not everyone experiences mental health the same. Like I've done a lot of programming for like first generation immigrants. I wasn't born here. There's a whole experience that comes with that can like be rough on your mental health. I actually had a good friend of mine tell me once, this may sound funny, but this was a serious conversation we had when the George Floyd thing happened. She said, this is the lowest thing in priority, but I wonder if people know that white guilt is a thing too. And I said, what do you mean? She was like, well, how do you think I feel when things like this happen? Done by white people. It feels shitty to be a white person. That's part of my experience. That's part of my mental health, because now I have Black friends and I walk around feeling weird and wondering if they think I'm right. I have a unique experience with it. It doesn't take away your experience with it, but we all are feeling something. Or people that came to me that were like, and I'm sure you've heard this going through like having people pass away around you. I didn't know what to say.
Right.
I just didn't know what to say to you. Like
Right.
that, like because mental health is so nuanced, right? Like you could say depression, but if it's from losing a loved one, maybe people haven't experienced that. So they don't even know, where do I even come in with it? You know what I mean? So I think that's the other thing that people need to know is like mental health can look so different for so many people.
And like you brought up with losing somebody, grief is something that
Oh
so many
my
people struggle to have conversations about.
Yes, because
And
grief is continuous. You can't
Yeah.
see it. It
And it
jumps
comes
back
in
out
so
of you,
many forms.
comes in waves. I
Yeah.
lost my cousin in 2020, and it's the oddest thing that like I haven't deleted her text thread.
Yeah.
I haven't deleted our thread on, Facebook messages. So you'll just be having a wonderful day and then hear a song and like, boom, you're in tears. Grief is
That's
like,
how it is with my brother. Yeah.
oh my God, it's rough. Like, because you don't see it coming. It could be months. You could be fine. And it's just like, it could be the anger. It could be bargaining with it. It could be, there's so many parts of it that I think even that, like when we talk about mental health, grief is a part of that.
I
And
think I would argue to say that's top three, one of the hardest
oh,
things to deal with.
oh yeah. They say death and divorce.
Yeah.
I actually like when I became mental health first aid trained, they make you like study all this stuff. And one of the things they did was it was like a matrix of the most stressful experiences. And so a bunch of mental health professionals came together and like did a rating system. And they basically said, yeah, like death was number one, divorce was number two. But it was also interesting to see how like down to like breaking a bone, like that list should be given to everybody. Because we go through this stuff and don't even realize how emotionally taxing that is. Like meeting people like, and my therapist had to tell me this. She was like, Nikki, after 13 years in an engagement, it was pretty much a divorce. So like, it's going to be a minute. Do you know how long this takes people? Do you know this like wrecks people's life? Like this, right? And so similar with losing a loved one, similar with in the last couple of years, a lot of people have been laid off of career. Like we don't know that grief is like crippling people and they still have to show up every day and act like nothing's wrong.
Right.
When you just lost a piece of your heart and you're like, I'm present physically, but the rest of me ain't here because I can't be like. And so I think compassion is something to talk about too, of like everybody you come across is dealing with some shit that you probably don't realize it because they're not going to come out and say that. They might be grieving. They might be depressed. They might be extremely anxious. And that's why they acted like that. So like, if you can't understand it, you don't have to tolerate it, but at least give people a little space because you never know.
Agreed. And I think it's really important that you did bring up that there is different avenues of grief too. That comes in losing your career, like you said, or cutting off a toxic family member,
Yes.
end of a relationship. And
Yes.
For me, I had to block my mom. I haven't talked to her about I think since August. I haven't talked to her, and it's been an ongoing thing with her and I. And it's not grieving her. Her and I not talking, it's grieving the relationship I always try to repair from when I was a kid.
Yeah. What you want.
Exactly. And I've said it to my therapist and, I used to feel bad about saying it. But I said to her, I'm like, I don't think I'm going to find peace until she's gone. And it's not necessarily wishing death on her. It's
no, but I understand it.
There's not going to be peace until she's gone. And I think that for herself too, because she lives in a world of she can do no wrong, and she's a very high functioning narcissistic person. So it's like she can never do wrong, she's never wrong, forget the past no matter what I did to you, kind of thing. And I wish grief is something they would have taught us in high school, in middle school.
And even grief of expectations.
Yeah.
It took me a long time to grieve what my parents will never be.
Right.
That's grief.
Like the one only thing that I learned from a psychology class in high school was a Robot Chicken episode about grief.
Really?
And it was the 5 stages of grief. And it was a giraffe sinking in quicksand. And they went through slides of what different stages of grief look like.
Wow.
And that has resonated with me for 23 years, 13 years.
Because what's so scary too is like, because we had very little to no education around this, people don't even realize when they're struggling with mental health.
Right.
I didn't until like I started getting panic attacks. It wasn't until it physically started happening that I was like, oh, wait, is this a thing? But by the time you're having panic attacks, you've had anxiety for a while. It's just now over the edge. But like, we don't even know what are the stages, what to look for. Like there are people around us that are depressed and we don't even see it because we don't even know what to look for. Like, I think there
needs to be so normal.
Yeah, that's the other thing is I feel like because depression has skyrocketed, we almost don't take it seriously enough. Because it's
Absolutely.
like everyone's depressed, whatever. It's like, no, this thing is really a heavy weight on people. It's something that needs to be addressed. Like, it's
And it's,
crazy.
it's just like when the conversation of male suicide comes up, and it's just like, I always get the, yeah, but so and so, they have a higher rate. And it's like, it's, I'm not comparing. I'm
Right.
literally giving you a fact
A
that
fact.
men go through with it
Yeah,
more times than
that's what
women
it
do.
is. That's what it is. And I think
And
wants to say that men, yes, 100% more.
and right now in 2023, I would argue to say that we're in a silent epidemic of male suicide.
Ooh.
And I said it to my therapist. I think it was shortly after the Green Ranger passed away last year. I can't
Mm-hmm.
believe it's a year already.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I said, is it going to take all of us to do it for somebody to listen?
Yeah. Yeah.
And I
Yeah.
hate that it has to get to that point for somebody to say,
Right.
"Oh, well, they're gone. I really should have looked out for the signs. I should have this. I should have that." It's like it shouldn't be anything. It should
Shouldn't
be,
be anything,
yeah.
like,
Having this conversation is so important.
yeah. Because I think that's what worries me is like when you see it's kind of like that guy Twitch. That was like the dancer guy, Ellen's DJ. When
Yeah,
there's so many people around you, it always leaves me with the question of like, no one saw this?
right,
Nobody? Like all these people are around you every day. How did no like that is a failure of the community. And we don't call it that. When someone takes their life, it is a failure of their immediate community because we are not paying enough attention to each other. We're not asking enough questions. We're not really looking in a person's eyes and seeing the energy when they tell us they're okay because we're
right.
so wrapped up in our own shit. That's a failure.
And I feel like most people, when they respond or reply to anything, whether it's a conversation or whether it's somebody venting, it's people reply to reply, not to understand and then reply.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Everybody reacts, I feel, from an emotional standpoint before they come to logical.
Mm-hmm.
And if we can get away from that as a society, I
Yes.
feel we can finally start having that conversation beyond just a hashtag every single month of hashtag mental health awareness week,
Uh-huh.
hashtag male suicide, and this and that. It's just like
Yeah.
mental health is not just stricken to 1 month. You know,
Right. It's not a
male
day.
suicide doesn't skyrocket in November.
Mm-hmm.
It's year round,
Happening year round. And
and
it's
it's the
happening
same
right
with
under your
anybody else.
yeah, and it's happening right around you in your community. You know what I mean? Like, well, what are we, how close of attention are we paying? Like,
Exactly.
how deep of questions are we asking? Are we, and to your point, are we actually listening? I
Exactly.
hate that we're now in a culture of I'm seeing a lot of debate content, a lot of arguing content, and you're not listening.
Right.
If you've come up with your response before the person's done talking, you weren't listening.
Exactly.
You hear all they said. How could you have a response? Like, you
Right.
know, and sometimes it's okay to say, I don't really know how to respond to that. I don't really have the
Right.
answer to that. But I'm listening, I'm hearing you. I just want to take it in. I don't always have to have something to say and a think piece about it as soon as you say it. Like, huh,
Right.
okay, I hear you, friend. That's
and I
enough.
and I feel like that extends to like every aspect of this community.
Mm-hmm.
It's like
Mm-hmm.
uh you know having we talk about it, but politics is a really bad one. And it's just like I used to see one side, just that side, and then I saw the other side. Okay, yeah, both are fucked. I
Mm-hmm.
don't
Mm-hmm.
hear either of your points.
True.
you
Yes.
know
Yeah. Yeah.
and then you start to listen, like every little detail on both sides. It's like, okay, you said this last month, but then you're saying something opposite now.
Right.
And it's kind of like that with mental health, where it's just like 1 month we're talking about male suicide, and then it's just forgotten, like it's not going to happen
Yep.
anymore.
Yep. 1 month we say we want vulnerability. And then when a person comes online and cries, what happens? That's so cringe. Why would you come on here and cry? Because didn't y'all say be more vulnerable? Like, and that's the same
And
thing
it's
you're
used
hearing
as a
people.
weapon now,
It's used as a weapon. So it's like
like
pick
you
a
said, the
side.
meme culture.
Yes. And there is such a Brene Brown writes a lot of books around shame and vulnerability. And I love that she talks about it because I never used to be a vulnerable person because there was a lot of shame associated with it. Island people are notoriously private and like, oh, keep it in the house. Yeah, like that's ever helped anybody grow.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's very
Is it still like that?
Oh, 100%. What happens in the
Really?
house stays in the house. It's betrayal if you talk about like, yeah, like it's
So
very,
it's
this
like
is
really old school.
very old school. Latin culture is very similar too, where it's like a lot of grievances are happening and no one knows. You know what I mean? Because the people aren't supposed to talk. You're supposed to uphold the image of the thing. Like, and at some point, what do we care more about? The image or
Right.
people suffering? People are
Right.
suffering. We got to care more about that, you know what I mean, than being right and about debating and all the things. Like I recently started having a lot more conversations with a friend of mine who's Muslim, and I made a joke and I said, you know what? Y'all are all right. It's just that no one lets y'all talk. If you
Right.
actually sat and listened to Muslim people, there's a lot of cool stuff about Islam, but they never get the chance to say that because everyone's jumping down their damn throat about it. Where it's like, maybe if we all just listen to each other just to hear, like, just tell me about it, friend. How does it work over what you have going on? Oh, okay.
Right.
I don't have any thoughts about it, but that's cool. Now I know. I don't
It's
have to
interesting
agree
that
or
you brought
disagree.
that up. My again, going back to the men's mental health advocate,
Yeah.
her husband's Muslim,
Oh, no way.
and she just converted
Oh,
to Islam.
yeah.
And I told her, I said, I don't really follow religion because I have a really bad experience with
Mm-hmm.
religion growing up.
Mm-hmm.
And I was just asking her because the conflict overseas, and I said, I don't know like who's right, who's
Yeah.
wrong. Like I don't
Yeah.
want to take a side.
Right.
And she was explaining it from her and her husband's perspective, and it's just like a lot of this makes sense because you're not going to hear any of this on the news. You're not going to
Mm.
see this on social media.
Yeah.
And it's like you said, giving people a voice that are being silenced. And Muslim, I'm assuming it's just women that they can't really speak their mind, right? Is it just them mainly?
It depends. I guess that's more like very traditional, but I mean, generally, yeah, they can like.
Yeah.
But I will say, like in Muslims are being shadow banned in general, not just women. They're like being kind of silenced on social media right now.
Right. And it's heartbreaking to hear that because I have friends on both sides of the
Yeah,
conflict,
same.
and it's like
Same.
I don't want to say, oh, I support these guys. Oh, you monster. You know what I mean? It's just I don't
It's hard.
take a side.
Yeah, but
you
but
know?
it's the same principle in that we can let people voice the parts that are hard and listen
Right.
to them. You know what I mean? Like that's like the angle I take where I'm like, people are hurting. So I don't mind
Right.
talking about that part, like I don't have to take a side, but I know that people hurting isn't right. And
And
so
that's the most important part to talk about. I feel
yeah,
like it's nobody
yes,
should be suffering at all.
nobody should be suffering. But it's that like it's that thing that nowadays people want you to pick a side and put a foot in the mud and all the things and argue. And it's like, why don't we just talk? Why can't we just talk?
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
you know, maybe I'm being
Um,
idealistic, but
so you kind of touched over it a little bit earlier. So I just kind of wanted to ask, about your platform and being in this community. What do you feel as a woman in this field and content creator community is the biggest stigma that you yourself have noticed or face?
this is a great question and I'm only laughing because of my answer, which is people are like the tone police. And I find it very interesting because men can say a great many things and no one questions their tone. But when a woman says things, oh, she's angry, and I'll give you a great example. I made a video a couple months ago, which was controversial, and I knew it was going to be. But what I find interesting is how it went from my opinion was controversial to you're ugly, you're
Oh
lesbian, you're a
no.
loser, no one's ever going to want you. You're going to, like, how did we get over there past you not agreeing with me? So I think there is this stigma of like, how would I describe it? If you're going to say your piece, you have to say it in a way that is soft and cushy and makes people feel good.
Right.
Right? If you don't, You're a disruptor. You're the angry lady. Right. And I found it so funny that people were like, you were so angry in that video. I'm like, y'all have never seen me pissed off. Like, I'm a Scorpio. That wasn't even 1/100th of the length. Dude, I don't even go there. That's like bad for your nervous system. I don't even like to be mad like that. Like, I just am expressive and I use my hands a lot right. But like the fact that that gets stigmatized as angry, I think sucks. And I think, again, there is already an angry Black lady trope that exists. And so sometimes I fall into that without actually being angry, Chris, not even angry. So it's hilarious. I've just learned, you can't, as someone told me once, if you live by the cheers, you will die by the booze. So you have to kind of take it all with a grain of salt.
I like that a lot.
Yes.
That's a good one.
That is like the thing I remember on social media all the time. If you get all hooped up about people thinking you're awesome, then you're really going to want to walk into traffic when they tell you you're a loser. So I'm like, let me just talk to my real friends and remember that I ain't nobody and I still take out the trash like everyone else. So
I've always found it interesting. I think there was a saying, if I remember right, it's similar to that. If people are always telling you that you're doing good, then they're not telling you the truth. And I feel like that's in like everything.
Yes, it is.
I'm very self-conscious about my podcasts and like who I have on and conversations that are had, like and I'm always very I get very personal with myself. It's like, oh, I'm not shit, I'm not doing good enough. And most of the people are like, listen, some people just aren't gonna click well with some of the guests that you have on there because either an opinion that person has that they don't agree with, or just it wasn't presented well, and you have to accept that you're not going to make everybody happy.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel in this community in general, it's important to be authentic in yourself opposed to trying to please everybody. So
100%.
I definitely like that saying that you 100%. Said a lot, because that's really good.
Because also I think, well-behaved people don't make history.
Facts. That's a fact.
So if I were to get on here and be 100% palatable, my videos wouldn't go viral. Who wouldn't give a fuck? And it's not that I do things to be inflammatory. It's that I know that there needs to be disruption in the space.
Yeah.
And so am I going to come on here and do the same thing everyone else is doing so I can fit in? No, that's not disruptive. That's not impactful. That's not going to make anyone's head snap up and go, what? Oh, shit, I'm listening now. You know what I mean? That's what I want. Whether you like me or not, you don't have to like me, but now you're listening and you're having conversation. And I think that is worthwhile.
And, it's interesting. Your response I found was really interesting because isn't it insane? And I hate using this word insane, but isn't it insane how personal people will get with you over an opinion?
Like when I tell you, and I'm a human being, so it's not every time I laugh at it. Sometimes it's really like, God damn, like you.
Yeah.
You must not have a dad in your life. You must be like, woo, like you really tried to get in here. And but here's what I also see. Everyone has a phone, including hurt people. So hurt people use their phone to hurt other people, unfortunately.
Yeah.
It doesn't excuse it. It sucks. I block those people. But I have never felt the amount of pain that would make me want to go cuss out a stranger on the internet. I haven't felt it. And I've been in a lot of pain. But it never took me to like, nah. Right. What is that? I want y'all to deal with that. So that's like the thing I say too, where it's like, you're not offending me. I can tell you're miserable, bro. Because as much as my life might get crazy sometimes, I'm never going to be that fucked up that I need to go cuss someone out. Never. Like my life has never been at that level where I'm like, yeah, I feel better now. Like, y'all gotta
there was a video that I came across of a gentleman sharing his story on a podcast about his suicide attempt.
Yeah.
And he went through with it and almost died, and he survived. Insanely powerful story.
Yeah.
And I remember how emotional it made me listening to it. And I said, thank you so much for sharing your story. I said, men's mental health matters. Mm-hmm. And I should have known better how I worded it, because they came in tropes of how many people
saying that. Yes. Are you serious?
Yeah, they were like, oh, well, men don't really go through that much, and women's mental health matters too, and men don't have real problems. Like it was getting bad. Mm-hmm. And I remember saying to somebody, I said, I'm not saying women's mental health doesn't matter.
Right.
I said, but until we can have the conversation of our mental health matters too,
Yes.
then arguments like this won't happen.
Right. Because I feel like people don't hear, like, it's not like you're saying they don't matter. It's not like you're saying women don't matter. It's saying we matter.
Right.
And you know why that's like absurd to me? That's kind of like, that's like when people say Black Lives Matter and people are like, all lives matter. I'm like, yeah, we didn't say it didn't. We're just saying ours also matters and we would like to not be killed. Why are you mad at anyone saying that? So you see what I mean? Is like people can take positive language and try to twist it to like, okay, I'll give you a good example. I'm on a podcast called The Stranger Fruit, and it's a lot of like kind of controversial topics of conversation, but it's like a panel. We had a conversation, and they used some of my clips. Again, my big mouth. They interviewed a lot of my clips, and in one of the clips, the episode was about being biracial. My little sister is biracial; she's my half sister, and I was telling a story about her because our father is Jamaican and her mom is white. She's Canadian. Do you know that people cuss me out in the comments for that, Chris?
What?
Literally, that were like, yeah, why would you call yourself Jamaican and not Black? See, that's self-hatred. You're racist. You don't like Black people. And I was like, this isn't real. Is this real? Is this seriously like, you just can't talk on the internet then. So just be quiet is what you're saying, because how am I wrong right now? I'm so lost. Like, people that are miserable will troll you for anything on the internet. I got trolled for saying my father is Jamaican, which he is. What else would you call him? That's where he's from. That's where we're from. What should I have said? I was wrong. Like, so you can literally be saying something good or right, and people can take that and make it anything. It's insane.
It's so bad. I truly don't
to be a content creator. I'll tell you that. I had to learn that. And honestly, like, I remember after that episode, I had a meeting with the producers of my podcast. And I was like, I'm getting slammed. This is insane. And they were like, Nikki, this is the arena. We have received death threats. Like, yeah. And it was a really real conversation because they were like, listen, like, we'll defend you till the end of the day. Of course, we're not going to like send you to slaughter, but unfortunately, now you're in a digital space. And this is what it is. People do vicious. People unload. People are vicious. When I see the things people say to celebrities, you know what I mean? Like, I understand why they lose it. Somebody called Cardi B's kid retarded. Bro, I can't take stuff like that to the chest. Like, how do you not punch everyone you see? Like,
because they have that public image that they have to protect.
Image. But people are cruel behind the keyboard, man. So and it's because folks are hurting and they have no outlet, and our society is more isolated than ever. That it's like, if I'm hurt and no one's gonna help me, I'm just gonna unleash this venom. Like,
and to speak to that too, so I'm a really big wrestling fan. I've grown up with it since I was like 7 years old, right?
Yeah.
Since social media became as big as it is now, I've seen wrestlers have their kids attacked, stalked at airports.
No.
One was almost got kidnapped by a fan.
Because now you're in the public eye more so on social.
Yes.
Because back in the day,
have no shame.
Your kids are
right. It's disgusting. Like, social media is disgusting.
That's very scary.
As much as I would love to say there's more positive than there's negative,
there's not.
No.
And I'll tell you why there's not. And I think this is why working in tech has always made social media interesting to me. There is a book, and I won't say the name of it, but there's a book that is used by every head of product at every major app. And the book was written basically about how to make people obsessed with your application. It's a product design book, how to design your features, your buttons, your UI, how to design your app to make people obsessed with it. It was used at Facebook. It was used at Twitter. There are people who, I took a workshop called Digital Wellness, and one of the guys was like one of the original guys at Facebook. And he was like, yeah, we got that handbook from the people at Google and the people at Amazon and the people at, like, this is standard product design. I'll give you an example. When Instagram first came out, you could reach the end of your feed. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Okay. Do you know how they changed that? There's a feature in tech called infinite scroll.
Mm-hmm. Like doom scrolling.
Correct. That's actually a feature, because what happens is there is a there's a true false statement you can write in your code that when you get to the end of the content for the tagged with today's date, do you serve up more, yes or no? When it first came out, they said no. Anything that was dated today, once you're done with it, you're done with it. Now that statement is false. When they hit the bottom, keep giving them more forever, so that you actually don't, like, you cannot reach the end of Instagram now. It like bounces and it shows you more content. Those are features in tech that they designed to keep you on there forever. You used to be able to just consume your day's worth of Instagram and go. Try scrolling to the bottom. You'll be here for the next 5 years. You're never going to get it. So it's like, I think having worked at tech companies, I understand that like these things aren't designed. Listen, if an app is free, you're the product.
Mm-hmm.
Nothing's free. Your time, your data.
Like a Netflix documentary on Facebook and how their algorithm and like the advertisement and stuff works.
Yeah. Like here's a fun one. And I love this because I love the company I worked for. I use Spotify every day. So I never have anything disparaging to say. But you know what I find funny? You know the Wrapped campaign every year? I saw a meme once that said Spotify is the only company that's like, hey, we've been tracking you, but isn't this so cool? Here's your data. But I think it's hilarious because it's so true. It's the truth. Like it's the only company to be like, we have been stalking you hard body all year, but we're going to make you feel better about that because we're going to make you a playlist and some cool visuals with your own stuff.
And a cool little DJ too.
And a cool DJ. And you're going to compare it with your friends. And we're going to skip over the fact of why we know all this.
Right.
Because we're tracking every single play, every single, like, I remember when I started working there and I went into the console of my own accounts, it showed every mobile device I'd ever played Spotify for. It shows everything.
Oh,
every tech company shows everything. I can't even, my friends at Facebook, like, girl, you don't even want to know what I see. You think you delete photos? Never. Friends at Snapchat, remember back when Snapchats disappeared? They don't. They're on the surface. Like, you, right? Like, so that's why I realized it is our job to try to put as much good into social media as possible because it's not designed for that. Frankly, after 2010, I don't know if you remember this, like all the heads of social media, even Jack Dorsey, the guy that used to own Twitter, he was like, this left my hands. I did not intend this. And that's why I'm out. Like, and he's one of the few tech founders I can respect because he was like, this is not what I signed up for. This has become a platform for nastiness and hate, and I'm gone. I never built it for that. Elon, you got it. I'm out. Like I can't, because it did go left. You wanted to make a way to connect, but it made a way to connect dark energy. Unfortunately,
yeah. So tell us, our listeners, about the women's circles that you have been part of. Do you attend yearly, or is this on a scheduled basis?
So I used to do them monthly. I am a big believer in staying attuned to moon cycles because we are 80% water and it affects us more than we think. So I used to bring people together around the new moon and the full moon every month. And then in the pandemic, we switched to doing it virtually, which was fun. Like I said, I took a break from business for a while, but it's something I really want to bring back because I think women's and men's circles are really important. I think that there are unique things that only we understand about ourselves. And I feel like community is critical to mental health. And even having moved the circles to like a Zoom type of space, I immediately saw the difference. Like there is a difference, right? And it's like the thing you said about running into the arms of somebody. In those in-person circles, that's what happens.
Right.
That embrace, that breakdown, that need for like, right? And so it's something I really want to bring back in 2024 because I think monthly or quarterly human beings should gather with other human beings and talk about their feelings. I really think that. Because like, when else are you going to do it? Never. You're just going to work and like, do your things.
So would that go alongside with your retreat?
Yeah, absolutely. Because I would love to see, you know what I think would be crazy? And I've never heard of this, but I would love to see a mixed retreat. I think it would be cool to get like a male coach and have them bring a group of men and almost do like two separate retreats that intersect, because I feel like, of course, like men would need their own programming, but it would be so interesting to like merge that. You never see that. That's the one thing that makes me sad is like you see men's circles, you see women's circles. I don't see intermixed mental health conversations between men and women enough, which is why I was also excited to do this podcast, because it's like, I feel like women hosts bring on women and like male hosts bring on men. So I love that you bring on both, because I do think there's two sides of a coin and we should be having those conversations.
Absolutely. And I was just on a therapist that I interviewed podcast, and she said the same thing, because she's like, her content is more geared towards women,
Yeah.
and she wanted me to bring in a men's perspective, because now she's starting to gain that following.
Uh-huh.
And one of the main things that I said was, the biggest thing about men is the protector should always be a thing. We should
Right.
always stay in our protector role, whether
Sure.
that's protecting our loved ones, protecting our family and friends, but more importantly, protecting our inner child,
Ooh.
protecting our inner being from constantly going through the ringer and driving ourselves into the ground. And with the retreat idea, I love the idea of two coming together, because it's like,
Right.
we're in a society of, oh, well, men's mental health matters more here, or women's mental health matters more here. It's like, dude, we all matter,
All
and
matter.
we're all going through a battle. It might not be the same, but
Right. It may not look the same how it's
right.
expressed.
But
Right.
trauma is not a competition. It should never
Hello.
be a competition.
We need a t-shirt that says that, telling you, because people love to play the Olympics of like, yeah, well, what I went through. And it's like, okay, but we all can come to the table like equally. That's not, you don't win anything for going through the most shit.
Like a broken leg and a sprained ankle, you're in pain for both
We're
of them.
both in pain. Exactly. There's no reason to be like, well, more of my leg is broken than yours. So, you know what I mean? Like,
Right,
that's
right.
silly when it's like, yeah, we're both on Oxycontin. So what are we going to do? Like, it's fine. Crazy. Like, and so I just love the idea of like, and also I think there's a cross conversation that needs to have of men telling us how to recognize mental health challenges in them and women saying that too. Because you know what I think sucks that happens in a relationship is like, we don't know how to tell when the other one is having challenges, and we read it totally wrong. Totally
Right.
wrong. And it's so crazy to me how many relationships I see that fail that I'm like, God, if y'all had the language, if you had like the information to know what your partner was going through, like, or if they knew how to give you the space, like, you know what somebody told me once? If you're with someone and they're going through something, ask them the 3 S's. And I was like, what's that? Ask them if they need space, support, or solutions, and let them tell you what they need. And I was like,
That's
bro,
brilliant.
I wish I knew that when I was like 20, because
Right.
I could have really changed the course of my life that way. Because I didn't know, I wasn't always the best at showing up for people. Because, like you said, sometimes people just want to hear, they just need support. They don't need you to fix it. They don't need, right? Like maybe sometimes they just need space and you're in their face. Like I find that one to be interesting about men. Sometimes I notice that when men are going through mental health challenges, they need like space.
Yeah.
And as women, we don't get that and we take it as rejection.
Interesting thing about that. So when my mom and I had our really last bad argument, right? Tried walking away from her, because I'm not a very confrontational person until I'm pushed.
Yeah, but you feel
And
it.
right. And I walked away, went downstairs into my room, and she followed me. And I sat there for 3 hours listening to her scream in my face without me saying a word.
Man.
Every possible insult, every possible way to tear me down as a man and a human being, she said and did. And that was the night before my attempt.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
like you said, sometimes, yes, we do need space. I
Mm-hmm.
would 100% agree with that.
Mm-hmm.
But also, I would love for that conversation to happen too, of how do we read those signs? Because
Yes.
I think we can attribute this to also societal norms
Mm-hmm.
of
Mm-hmm.
of you know we alluded to it earlier about a breakup and the differences between men going through it and women going through it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Women are, your boss, you're upgrading to a different
Mm-hmm.
person, and
Yeah.
he wasn't ever shit.
Right.
The amount of times I've heard that,
And
you know
literally, right?
and
Shitty
then with
narrative.
men, yeah. And it's like, I'm so grateful my parents didn't have social media, because they went through a nasty divorce,
Mm-hmm.
and
One too.
that arguing lasted over 20 years. It still go on to this day.
Damn.
And they got divorced when I was 8.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
Talk about dragging it out.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's mainly her, because she didn't break that cycle of
Mm-hmm.
toxic parents. She continued it and made it worse.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, she always has to be a victim in everybody's story. So, again, I would love for a retreat for that to be possible,
I think that
because
was phenomenal. Like the amount of healing. And I think too, like there's an interesting thing that happens when men and women get together where you almost have an overlay, right? Like whoever hurt you, you lay that over the person you're dealing with of the opposite sex. And sometimes that means you project things onto them that have nothing to do with them.
right.
There's also a reverse exercise in psychology that is really beneficial to that, which is you get to heal stuff. Do you know that there's a thing in therapy where, like, let's say your therapist was a man, they would bring in a woman and have you say to her the things that you've wanted to say to your mother. Because having that feminine energy in the room, it feels different channeling that energy to that person and saying that and getting it out than it would to a man, right? Vice versa. So I feel like there's also like, we lose so much by men and women not coming together and having conversations about mental health, because in a way we could help heal each other on a deeper level than we think, because it's like, you're not just angry at your dad, now you're angry at all men.
Right.
And maybe if you had some men to sit in a space with you and hold you and go, we are safe men. So let's reprogram the idea that some men are safe and vice versa. You know what I mean? I think that would also go a long way.
I agree 100%. And, for me, when I was looking for a therapist, my immediate thought was, I don't want a guy therapist because I don't want that silent judgment. And
Okay.
That's something I can speak to as a guy, because when I talk to my friends about anything I'm going through, I jump over a lot.
Okay.
And I've noticed that about myself.
Is that like the hurtful parts that you jump over?
It's more of the really vulnerable parts.
Okay.
I think there's probably like one, maybe two friends that I'll actually like speak to everything that I'm going through. But like, it's strange talking to other guys about it because society makes it that way. And it's been implanted in the back of our head that guys don't sit around and drink beers and talk about each other's problems.
Yeah.
Guys talk about women, guys talk about the cars they drive and all this nonsense. And, I like that approach where you said, a guy would bring in a woman and you would speak your mind to her, what's going on with your mom.
Yes.
And I think that would be a very powerful thing to happen. But
because you know what I think about? There's not enough, because I feel like men and women only deal with each other romantically or sexually. Like, you know why I know that? This is so funny. Like most times, because I've been like dating, whatever, the comment I hear the most is, I'm never on the phone this long with anybody. And it makes me laugh every time men say that, because I'm like, right, because no one listens to you enough.
Right.
The only reason you've been on the phone with me this long is not because I'm special. It's because you realize that I will shut the hell up and let you talk. And now it's 2 hours because you had so much inside to say. And some of those parts you had to leave out among your homeboys and your male friends. And so now you actually have a soft space to just say it.
Exactly.
But you don't owe me a date. You don't owe me I don't care. I'm okay if we had a couple conversations and it never becomes anything, because golly, it sounded like you needed someone to talk to. And I'm okay having been that for a couple of weeks. I don't care. I'm a human being. Like, but it astounds me that that's the thing I've noticed in dating. Like, do you know how many guys end up talking about like, oh, my brother passed, my dad passed, I had COVID. Like it strays away from dating stuff straight away with men, because it's like, there's a bunch of other shit in my head. And I just don't have, because think about it. You're not allowed to have female friends. Women don't want to be like, there's that weird thing where it's like, no, we actually need that, because sometimes you need feminine energy where you can go to those soft, squishy, vulnerable parts that you can't go to with your male friends. And frankly, I tell all my female friends, you need to run some of this by a man who will give you some good logical advice until you're jumping out the window.
Right.
That's what I love about it. I can say the same emotional story to a guy friend and a girlfriend. She's gonna be like, yeah, blah, 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 because you felt like that and you were right. And my male friend's gonna be like, but do you see where the little piece you were wrong? I love you, but there's a little moment where you could have, right? They're gonna give it to you in a way that
right.
Oh, bro, I didn't see that. I didn't think about it. Like I was so in my feelings that I wasn't. We have that balance with each other of logic and vulnerability that like, that's why I hate when people are like, what do you bring to the table? I'm like, our natural energy. is a compliment to each other as men and women. That's what we bring to the table. It doesn't have to be all this nonsense. So I think if we create more spaces, and in 2024, I want to do a lot more collaborations in which I would even love to see like private Zooms where you bring on 5 guys. I just did a live with a guy in London, a relationship, like same thing where most of the people you talk to are men. Let's cross these conversations up. Let's, like get on lives together, get in conversations together. Cause I feel like that's where healing happens,
Totally agreed. So the Modern Goddess newsletter, what does that entail for those who may be interested?
That entails uplifting stories, a little bit of personal about myself, wellness tips, just generally how to improve your energy, because that's like my number one focus. Where your energy goes, everything flows. So to me, the newsletter is like just a little piece of joy in your inbox, a little piece of positivity, a little bit of good tips.
I feel like we could all use something like that because, we have so many of these, obviously everybody having phones nowadays, you have so many apps and they're, there are affirmation apps, but like there are some people that will get overwhelmed, like myself. I had to uninstall one because it's just like, all right, every 5 seconds it's going off.
You're like, okay, relax. I don't need to hear.
I'm enough. I get it. I'm enough.
I'm enough every 5 minutes on the minute. Like, okay, you're kind of.
How many different ways can you say the word hello? Stop it.
You know what I mean? So it's like, yeah, there's got to be other ways. And plus, too, I think we're all always in our email anyway. So sometimes as you're going through your to-dos, it's nice to just have a little, like I subscribe to The Secret, their newsletter, because it just reminds me of like good spiritual principles randomly in my week. Where I'll be like, well, you're right. in between all the things I have to do and like 70% off emails, like it's good to see a little something positive.
So one of the most important questions that I wrote on here, and I think it's my favorite that I wanted to ask you, was one of my favorite clips you created was why good energy people get hated on, and would love for you to share to our listeners on your viewpoint of why this happens.
So there is a thing that goes on, and I think anybody that's dealt with a narcissist knows this to be true, is that when you are, and here's the thing too, like empaths are narcissist magnets. They love us because we can feel and they can't, right? And so what happens is people see good energy in you and they want that. But 2 things happen. Eventually, when somebody has what you don't want, you eventually end up hating them for it if they don't give it to you, right? Or you assume like, oh, because I don't have good energy, they're definitely fake. And when you get close enough to that person, you realize they're not fake. It pisses you off. So I find this thing happens all the time where people meet me, and I'm sure this happens to you and many other people. Oh my God, you have such good energy. I love your energy. Oh my God, right? And they come in and oh my God, so intense. They want to be your friend. And then they realize like, oh, you're this positive all the time. That's annoying as hell. Yeah, I am. You thought this was just on Mondays? Like,
how dare you be positive?
How dare you try to tell me to reach for the silver lining, you annoying bitch? Like, how dare you? Right? And so it makes people mad. Or it's like, you're not hand giving me your energy, right? I'm not going to be on the phone with you all day long. You can't text me all day. You can't just call me 75 times for some advice real fast. And when people do not get to use your energy like an ATM, they hate it.
Oh, yeah.
And so they end up flipping that real quickly. And now it's like, here's the example I used in my video I made about this. I have a friend that's a trainer, and I observe how people treat her everywhere we go work because she has like an amazing physique. People are like, oh my God, you're doing like a 6-pack. You're in such good shape. I need to work out with you. And every time I'm like, yeah, all right. Because what happens is they all say that to her. Yeah. And then when they realize that she actually goes to the gym 5 days a week, it's like, oh, this bitch. Like,
I don't want to do all
that. Your friend. I wasn't trying to do all that. Now I feel weird eating a donut in front of you because you're going to make me feel like an asshole. Right. Like when she doesn't care and she's taking me to Krispy Kreme her damn self. So it's like what people expect you, right? They have these expectations of you based on the energy that you put out, and then they get close to you. And it's like, if you don't let me be an energy vampire and drain you, and if you're not fake and negative like me, and choose to look at your life through victimhood, because I think that's what really makes people mad. People think that people with good energy have perfect lives. Right. We do not. We just choose the positive. Listen, like I've grown up in poverty with family that are alcoholics, narcissists, drug abuse, mental health, you name it, right? And I can still pick to have a good day. I can still, when I'm depressed, I watch stand-up comedy. People don't even know that. I will be in the middle of the most shambles of my life, and I'm going to turn on Netflix and a stand-up special and holler in my own house, because at least for an hour, I get to be in a good damn mood. And then I can go back to the shambles of my life, right? Like, but it's so fascinating to me that people, like, as soon as I hear people go, oh my God, I love your energy, I almost run now, because I'm like, oh God, here they come again. Because it's going to, well, here's why it's hurtful, and here's why I made the video. I don't think people realize how hurtful that is for the person in it. Because all of us have an inner child, and my inner child wanted to be your friend.
Right.
And I thought we were going to be friends. I thought it was going to be an equal give and take. I thought that even though I had good energy, you'd let me still talk about my down days.
Right.
But you don't. That's hurtful as fuck. And that's why I made that video, because it's like, being the good energy person doesn't mean I don't have depression either. And it means I need you to hold space for me when I'm not the high energy person. But a lot of people don't come around for that. They're like, oh, you're not going to pick me up today? No, because today my energy is low too. I'm like you. I'm human. I know I seem like Mr. Rogers, but like sometimes that comes down. And I find that like, this is the thing I tell to empaths now. Only be around people who it's reciprocal.
Yeah.
Only because it will kill you. Otherwise.
I just I want to say how grateful I am for you sharing that, because my inner child felt every piece of that. And I'm not gonna lie, I kind of choked up a little bit.
Emotional too, yeah.
And it's interesting being such an open-hearted person and the good energy, and oh my God, you have gone through so much and you're in high spirits and you're doing so great. And the second you step out of line, out of that box they created for you, your ability, you're not what they expected, and they ghost you and they cut you out of their life.
It's so devastating, Chris.
It hurts so much.
It hurts so fucking bad. And it's like, that's the thing, like, friendship breakups hurt worse than regular breakups, in my opinion.
I agree 100%.
Because I do think they hit our inner child right in the chest.
Yes.
Because we all want to be accepted, and I have found myself saying that a lot. Why don't you just want to be my friend? And it makes me feel like I'm 5, but it's like real. Like, I thought we were going to be friends. And you know something, Chris? I never want to grow out of being that vulnerable, because it'll make me a real shitty fucking person. And shout out to both of us for getting choked up for that, because it means we still have a heart and we still want to actually connect with people. We're probably going to be friends after this, just to let you know. But like, because we need more genuine people in the world. You know what I hate? Everyone's walking around like, my cutoff game is strong. I don't need anybody. I block people. Like, yeah, okay, no man's an island, cool guy. What do you think you're cool for not having feelings and not wanting to be anyone's friend? You're going against the design of being a human being, yo. You don't get a prize for that.
Instead of being an island, be a lighthouse.
Be a lighthouse. Tell people, come through.
Guide people through those shark-infested waters.
Yeah, like, God.
Reach out to them when they're drowning. It's like I said, it's something that hits me really hard too, is when somebody doesn't want to be the same friend that you thought they were going to be for you. And I'm really grateful for you in this conversation, because it's something not a lot of people take into account to when it comes to content creators like you and I, and being involved in mental health. It's like, we're struggling too. We're just trying to help you guys navigate it through with us.
Right. We may have
that's the important part with us.
Right. I'm never up here. I always say that. I'm only coaching because I have a few tools that I want to share.
We're in the trenches.
In the trenches doesn't exempt me. And I think I know what's at the root of what made you emotional. What made me emotional is that I saw a post once that said, and it was the most beautiful thing I've ever seen. It was about Winnie the Pooh. And it said, you know why those animals were great? Because they were Eeyore's friend, even though he was depressed. That hit me in the chest, and I boohoo cried when I saw that, because I was like, people don't know how that feels to mask and pretend it's okay. And the second you take that mask down and tell someone you're hurting and they reject you for it, Jesus Christ. Like that is crushing as fuck.
And it's even worse when you try to express it to family members that don't accept it, because the response that I've been given is your life isn't that bad and what you're going through isn't as bad as somebody else. And well,
Oh,
it's I've had
that's so
my
hurtful.
mom and my dad say things like
I'm
that to me.
serious, Chris. From
Yeah,
the two people that should give you the validation the most.
right. And they've given me the complete opposite.
Jesus.
Um, my dad has gotten a little bit better about it, but it's
That
still,
original hurt is still, yeah.
yeah,
That
it's
original rejection is there.
there's a lot of stuff I know I can't talk to him about, and I know he won't
Mhm.
change.
Yeah,
And when you have to accept that
that's
from people
rough.
that you care about, it's even worse.
So rough. Because it's like
Uh,
my sister says it like this too, where she's like, they're alive, but she says it like that about
yeah,
about our parents. Because it's like,
right.
yeah, you're alive, but do I have the emotional backing like that? Like, damn, like no. So it makes you feel like an orphan.
Right.
It was
And
a, yeah, like, I'm so
I
sorry.
remember a conversation I had with my dad. I think it was last night, either last night or today. I don't remember.
Mhm.
Um, and I told him, I said, if there was a way I can remove my mom from my birth certificate, I would. Because I'm embarrassed talking about her to love interests because I don't have a relationship with her, and I don't want that as a viewpoint in how I see women,
Oh, yes. Because that's the other thing
men
is people judge you.
judge. Exactly. I was
Oh,
just gonna
like
say
I
that.
feel so judged in dating. I usually don't get to my family till the very end because I don't want to be the broken home kid. That's
Yeah,
such a real thing.
yeah. And I don't want to be judged by the relationship I have with my mom,
Right.
because
Because
I
it's not
know
your
that's
fault either.
another society norm.
Yeah, how a man treats his mother when it's like, have we interviewed the mom though? Do we know what he's working with? Do we know
Right.
why he might be distant from that? And also, I think we should give people the grace to say, there are some people who have made the intention of loving differently than they were loved.
Right.
And so don't do that to a person that maybe they didn't come from the most perfectly loving home. Don't count them out because of that. Because I think
Exactly.
that's unfair too. Of like, oh, if a person comes from a imperfect home or a broken home, or if they have mental health, or whatever, it makes you out of the running of being able to love somebody or be loved. Where it's like, damn, like, do
Right.
y'all hear how awful that sounds? Like,
Yeah. It's
rather
heartbreaking.
than saying there's people who will understand that,
Right.
right? Like, yeah, I hate that whole like, well, you judge a person by the relationship with their family. I'm like, well, then I'm bye.
You better lock me up.
Yeah, lock me up. I'm out of here. Like, right. And it's like that's not people's fault. Also,
Right.
we cannot. Now that's spirituality. Sure, we picked the best. We'll get to that another day. But like while we're here, we can't
Yeah.
change our family who we came with. We're stuck with it now. It's happening. You know what I mean? So I think really
Create your own family. Your
create your own
friends, your
family.
family.
Yes. And give people compassion to be like, whoa,
Um,
it hurts me that you didn't have that. Right?
right.
How can we create that? How can we? And I think more people need to go into relationships that way, right? If you didn't have it, how can we make that?
Yeah.
Because we can't go backwards. I can't fabricate it, but we can change it going forward, right? We can build a new thing. Like, I think
Yeah.
that's kind of a beautiful thing. And I also think, let me just say this. I think that people who did not receive the type of love they should actually love harder than other people.
Agreed. Yeah.
Means more to us. That's what I
Yeah.
think.
I'm the person for other people I wish I had growing up.
Boom, there it is.
And when
That's it.
my therapist said that to me, I broke out in tears.
It's real because it's like an act of self-healing by you doing this work. Like
Right.
you're being that person. And that's the only thing you can do because you can't go backwards. You know what I mean? You can't. So it's like every day that you show up that way, it is like rewriting. That's a beautiful thing. Because so think about
Um,
it. Some people go through stuff and they don't want to do that. They just turn evil.
right. So before we get to this last question, I just want to say again, thank you so much for being on today's podcast. This has been one of the best conversations I think I've
I was
had
just
in
gonna
a
say
long
this has been an amazing conversation, man. Absolutely.
time. So I ask every one of my guests this, and I've loved every single answer you've given so far. So I can't wait to hear your answer on this. If you could change one thing in the mental health community, what would it be?
Free therapy.
Free therapy.
Free therapy for everybody. I think the second you turn 18, you leave your parents' house, you should stop, right? Like school has ended and now the reprocessing should begin of like what did you just endure in childhood? Let's sort that out before we send you out into the world expecting you to function properly. Because everybody gets something from childhood. You may not have, your parents didn't mean to, but I think there should be some kind of free mental health between 18 and 25 to catch a lot of shit. Like, because adulting then happens to you and you need therapy for more other things. But like, if I could give,
right.
Being adulthood, you need therapy. Like, oh, this is traumatizing, paying bills. I don't like this for me. But I think, yeah, if we could really catch the youth, like, or even services for younger folk, high school, I think therapy should be introduced way younger.
I agree 100%.
Get into the home because while you're in your parents' house, you need therapy because you're struggling with it in real time. Like I would have loved to have,
especially with social media,
right?
Being as bad as it is.
I would have loved to have somebody to talk to at that age. So I would love to see that. Even to see more mental health professionals do pro bono work for kids.
Right. I absolutely love that answer. I think free therapy would be great, especially starting at young age. I would argue to say even like right when they hit teens would be the best way to.
I know your brain kind of scrambles.
Yeah, because you're figuring out who you are, and high school and everything is getting ready to start, and we all know how hard that was. And I just feel it's so hard to reach the youth, and unfortunately, the number 2 killer in 12 to 17 is suicide.
Are you serious?
Yeah. And it shouldn't be this way.
It shouldn't be.
So, like we've been talking about the entire podcast, holding that space.
Yes.
And that space needs to have them included.
Yeah.
Not with adults.
Right.
Because adults don't view it the same way.
That's true.
But with kids and teens all together would be great. So at the end of every podcast, I like to read a quote based on either mental health or whatever subject we're talking about. I know you had a little saying that you like to live by. So if you want to share that with our listeners, please feel free.
Yes, I would like to tell everyone listening that you have not yet met all the people that will love you. And I want you to stay here with us until you meet them.
Absolutely. Love that. I think it's one of those sayings that I don't hear enough. And when I do read it, it's like, only 31 years old. And all the people that I have met so far are incredible people, including yourself.
Thank you.
And thinking about the future and how many more years that we have in this life, it's like, man, how many more awesome kick-ass people can I meet?
Right.
And networking like this extends that olive branch and it makes things so much more possible.
Absolutely.
So today's quote is brought by Kara. I'm probably going to butcher her last name. Delvinge, I think is how you say her last name. And it reads, being vulnerable is actually a strength and not a weakness. That's why more and more mental health is such an important thing to talk about. It's the same as being physically sick. When you keep all those things inside, when you bottle them up, it makes you ill.
That's it. That's absolutely it. I love that.
And being able to start this conversation is probably the hardest part for so many people. Starting your healing journey for my listeners that are thinking about starting, don't hesitate. Don't double think about it and take that first step. Have that conversation with your closest friend. I'm like, hey, I think I need to start therapy, or hey, I need to start looking into a healing energy coach like yourself. There's so many options, and don't let people around you talk you out of getting help for yourself, because you are worth so much in this life. And before we wrap up today's podcast, where can everybody find you?
You can find me on Instagram at Nikki Valentine. That's with 2 Ks, not a C and a K. And on TikTok, same thing, Nikki Valentine. You can find me at Nikki, Nikki-Valentine.com for all the things.
Perfect. Thank you so much again for being on today's podcast. You're a lovely guest.
Thank you, Chris, for doing this work. And I'm grateful that you're here with us. You are an amazing light. I'm looking forward to talking to you again soon.
Yeah, absolutely. And for my listeners, as always, be well and please be gentle with yourselves. Until next time.